Yeah. So an easy place to start would be, removing the three top inflammatory foods. So that'd be gluten. So that's your wheat products. Dairy would be number two, and then sugar would be number three. So if you take out those three foods alone for 30 days, you're gonna feel better. No matter who you are, no matter what you're
Mm.
suffering from, you're gonna feel better. Because those do create a ton of inflammation. So that's a good, easy place to start. And when you take those foods away, some of the things to look out for, obviously, from a digestive standpoint, less gas, less bloating, better regular bowel habits. When you take the gluten out, you probably notice more neurological stuff. So maybe better
Mm.
thinking, less brain fog, less headaches, maybe even some sinus issues might clear up. So those,
Yeah.
and then the sugar too. The sugar is a big one for like sinus issues, brain fog, neurological stuff. So when you take away those three foods, like I said, you're going to feel better no matter who you are, no matter what you're suffering with.
We often hear people wishing us a long, happy, and healthy life. But what if the length isn't what matters most? What if instead it's the breadth, depth, and purpose of each day that matters most? Welcome to the Live the Width of Your Life podcast. My name is Annette Ardelian Kuzma, and join me weekly as I interview guests who made changes in their own lives to live more fully with intention, gratitude, and joy. Be prepared to be inspired by their stories of how they shifted their mindset, took courageous action, and designed the life that they always wanted to live. Hey, this is Annetta. I'm so excited about this week's episode with Dr. Marcus Cirelli. We talked about so many things that we could each be doing to improve our optimal health. Dr. Cirelli is a functional medicine doctor. He has extensive training and education in clinical nutrition. He is a chiropractor. He's also a certified gluten expert. And he's someone who's actually employed all of these holistic medicine in order to improve his own health. And he loves getting to the root cause of what's ailing his patients. We talk about everything from how to cure gut health. We talk about the common illnesses and ailments that we are starting to experience, where we can find common toxins in our environment, ways to eliminate it. He shares a lot about things that we can do right now in terms of nutrition or other lifestyle changes that we can make to start to live healthier lives and also start to feel better. If you are dealing with any health issues or are decided that you are ready to start making some changes, you won't want to miss today's episode. Take a listen. Dr. Cirelli, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I appreciate being here. So I'm excited for this.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I've wanted to have you on for a long time. I follow everything you do on Instagram. I love all the content that you provide. And I know that folks are going to get so much value from what we cover today.
Good.
So maybe for those that don't know you, share just a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so my background's actually in chiropractic medicine. I went to school at Life University, which is down in Atlanta. That it's probably the most holistic chiropractic school you can go to. So I was exposed to a lot of different healing modalities, and people walking barefoot around campus, and all kinds of supplements, things like that. So, and I'd always had a background and an interest in those things. So chiropractic school kind of opened up my mind a little bit more. And then when I graduated, I came back up to Cleveland, took a job in Brecksville, went to private practice, and started to help people. And it was good because, like, you're helping people for what they come into you for, but there's so many other things that I was realizing that people were missing, whether it was diet or lifestyle or stress in their lives, that a lot of these things were, a lot of their problems were caused by this. So I was looking for something a little bit different, something else to add into my practice. I could help my patients a little bit further. That's when I found functional medicine. I went and saw a lecture given by Dr. Mark Hyman. A lot of people know that name nowadays. He lectured about functional medicine. It was my first time hearing that. And that kind of opened up my eyes, like, hey, this is how I want to practice. So I went and I got a couple certifications in functional medicine. So now I see people for both chiropractic and functional medicine, but more geared towards a functional medicine and helping people, improve their lifestyles, improve their diet, get to the root cause of what their problems are to begin with.
Yeah, gosh. Well, of course, Dr. Mark Hyman has sort of brought functional medicine to the mainstream for those that weren't necessarily that familiar. But for those that don't have a background, like, how would you help describe the difference between functional medicine and maybe Western medicine?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I kind of like to use like the analogy. So say you went to your medical doctor, right? And you had high blood pressure. 99% of the time, your medical doctor is going to give you a medication to help lower that blood pressure. If somebody came to me for high blood pressure, I'd be looking at what's your diet like? What are you eating? What are you not eating? Is there nutritional deficiencies?
Mm.
How much stress is your body under? How's that impacting that? Are you sleeping correctly? Are you being exposed to a lot of toxins? So I always like to dive a little bit deeper. That's kind of how I describe functional medicine. We're actually looking for the root cause of why these problems are happening to begin with, not just, hey, let's give you medication, let's put a Band-Aid on it, but really find those mechanisms of why the body's breaking down and why these side effects are happening to begin with.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. Now, do you find that since you started practicing functional medicine, do you feel like more people are coming to you before they see their doctors, or do you find that they go to their doctors, don't necessarily get an answer, and then they're coming to you to figure out the root cause?
Yeah, most of the times people have been to 3, 4 other doctors before they come to my office. So they tried medication or maybe surgery or maybe some lifestyle changes, but not enough. So most of the time, people who walk in, there's the people who've kind of exhausted all their options at this point, looking for something a little bit different that they haven't had before.
Okay. And are there top 3 or 5 things that people typically are coming to you? Like, are there certain things that are just more common right now in our society?
Yeah, gut issues are the number one thing I see people
Mm.
for. So whether that's IBS or constipation, diarrhea, acid reflux, bloating, inability to handle certain foods, food sensitivities. So that's by far number one. What I see people for. Number two, I would say would be autoimmune diseases, which are just kind of on the rise right now in America, and
Yeah.
they're growing, which is crazy. But yeah, autoimmune would be number two. So whether that's diabetes or lupus, or I mean, there's hundreds of them. So the list is pretty huge. So that'd be probably number two. And then there's a lot of people who do come in that are just looking for optimal health, wellness. I saw a patient just before we hopped on this call here who just felt pretty good, diet was pretty good, but just wanted to see, hey, am I eating the right stuff? Can I add some stuff in? Can I take away some supplements?
Hmm.
So I like those patients. Those are the fun ones that don't come in that are hungover and have a million problems going on. But those are the fun ones too. The ones that do give you challenges, and they're always fun to figure out what is going on here. Why are these people having these problems to begin with?
Yeah, gut health is so common. And I know myself if there's something going on with my gut, I just don't feel right overall, right? It impacts my ability to think. Sometimes I have foggy brain. And so what would you say are some of the things you would do with someone who comes in experiencing maybe some gut issues? Like, what are some of the things that you typically do, either asking them questions or are there tests that can be done?
Yeah, the first thing I always look at is their diet. What are you eating? Most of the times, a lot of these gut issues are driven by processed foods, inflammatory foods, things that didn't even exist, 10, 20, 30 years ago, that are man-made in the lab. So a lot of it comes down to food, what people are eating. Sometimes it's, past history of antibiotic use, which destroys a lot of that good bacteria in the gut.
Mm,
That can cause
yeah.
major shifts, so that can affect the brain and thinking. So like you said, the fogginess or the brain fog, anxiety, depression can be affected by that gut bacteria. So we're looking at, what kind of history do you have with antibiotics? Um, Also looking at just organ function. So is the liver, gallbladder, pancreas working the right way? Is the stomach working the right way? Is there anything bad in there, like parasites or pathogens? So any history of, foreign travel, maybe you picked something up when you went to Mexico and
Mm,
didn't realize it and brought it back. Um, so I use a comprehensive stool analysis, which is a test that looks at all those things, looks at the balance of bacteria, all the organ functions, looks at anything weird like parasites, pathogens, fungus, yeast. That kind of gives me a picture, at least gives me a starting point to say, hey, here's what's going on. Here's what we can do from a natural standpoint to help fix some of these things. So no drugs, no medications. We're using, herbal products, supplements, lifestyle changes, kind of put your body back into that healing state.
wow. And so when someone comes to you and say they do have maybe some gut issues and you work through with them, like how long does it take before you can start to feel better? Is this like a long process, or can you start to see some benefits right away with making some easy changes?
Sure. Most of the time, I mean, you'd be surprised, right? I mean, it depends on how long somebody's had issues for. The gut is one of those areas in the body that can regenerate pretty quickly, as long as you take away those stressors that are causing the damage to begin with. Um, so most of the times, people do notice a change, whether it's less bloating, less gas, things like that, within the first month. Now, again, if somebody's had digestive issues for 4 decades, it might take a little bit longer than that. But people do
Yeah.
notice a change pretty quickly in terms of better bowel movements, less bloating, less gas, able to digest food a little bit better. So it comes down to case by case basis because everybody is different. But I would say within at least a month, you should notice some kind of change in terms of symptoms.
Yeah. Isn't it crazy when you said, and I know you're kind of maybe half joking about 4 decades, but there are probably people who live a majority of their life just not feeling good.
Oh,
Like,
absolutely.
do you think that as a society we forgot that it's not natural to not feel good in our body?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I think we kind of like almost make it to the point now where it's we normalize not feeling good because so many people don't feel good.
Yeah.
Which is not, I mean, it's not normal to have these things. It's not normal to have gas and bloating and brain fog and fatigue and skin issues and all that. That's not normal. But so many people do have these things that it has become the norm, which is kind of scary to a sense.
Yeah. It's crazy. I think of, sometimes I know I don't do well with cheese, and I think that it's like 75% of the American population is lactose intolerant or probably has some symptoms when they eat dairy. But, a good charcuterie board and it just tastes so good, right?
Yeah,
So we
yeah,
put ourselves sometimes in these situations where you're not going to feel good. But I think the point is that if something doesn't agree with you, how do you start to identify what might be the culprit? Like, say they don't come to you, but they're like, "Gosh, maybe my stomach doesn't feel great after I eat." Like, what should people start to look for in terms of making some adjustments just on their own?
yeah. So an easy place to start would be removing the three top inflammatory foods. So that'd be gluten. So that's your wheat products. Dairy would be number two, and then sugar would be number three. So if you take out those three foods alone for 30 days, you're gonna feel better. No matter who you are, no matter what you're
Mm.
suffering from, you're gonna feel better. Because those do create a ton of inflammation. So that's a good, easy place to start. And when you take those foods away, some of the things to look out for, obviously, from a digestive standpoint, less gas, less bloating, better regular bowel habits. When you take the gluten out, you probably notice more neurological stuff. So maybe better
Mm.
thinking, less brain fog, less headaches, maybe even some sinus issues might clear up. So those,
Yeah.
and then the sugar too. The sugar is a big one for like sinus issues, brain fog, neurological stuff. So when you take away those three foods, like I said, you're going to feel better no matter who you are, no matter what you're suffering with. So that's an easy
Hmm.
place to start. If you want to do it from a dietary standpoint, a lot of people are chronically dehydrated too. So I always say, hey, how much water are you drinking? Coffee
Hmm.
doesn't count as water, tea doesn't count as water, soda doesn't count as water. So
Yeah.
that's another good making sure you're getting the water on a daily basis. So two easy things:
Oh
remove
gosh.
some bad foods and add some water in.
Yeah. Yeah, you're gonna upset a lot of people who are counting their coffee in as their hydration.
I know.
No, it's so one of the things I noticed, and so we have a lot of gluten insensitivity in our family, my daughters and me, and especially in the States. But when I go to Europe, and I just noticed that I can consume maybe a croissant or some bread or some crostini. I just don't feel the same when I consume wheat, just wheat overall in foreign countries as compared to the States. So can you explain a little bit, maybe like, is it the way we're producing the wheat, or what is it, more gluten in our wheat content? Like what's causing some of these challenges for us?
Yeah, so there's two big things. One is something called glyphosate or Roundup. So you've probably heard
Yeah.
of Roundup before, which is the chemical they spray
Mhm.
on plants. Yep. So what they do in America, and glyphosate's banned in Europe, so you're not allowed to use it. You can't spray it on any kind of produce or any kind of wheat products. Of course, here in America, we allow that to happen. So what that does is actually they spray it on the wheat right before they harvest it, and it basically freaks out the plant, thinks it's dying, so it releases more gluten. So we actually have more gluten here in our wheat products than you would have over somewhere in Europe. And then the other
Mm.
big difference is that the wheat we use here is different from the wheat we use or that's used over in Europe. So in Europe, they use something called old wheat. Here we use a hybridized version that's called new wheat, which is harder for us to digest, harder for us to break down. Our bodies aren't used to having that. So that's the other big kind of difference between um, things here in America and things in Europe. I just got back from Italy and I could eat pasta and pizza and it did not bother me here. If I did that in America, or it didn't bother me there, if I did that in America, it would just destroy my
Wow.
gut and I would not feel good. So there is a huge difference. And a lot of people notice that when they go over to foreign countries. Hey, I can eat this.
Hmm.
I can eat that here in America.
It's so true, and I actually always feel like I eat maybe a little bit more, or I sample more foods that I wouldn't necessarily consume here on a regular basis, and I always feel better and I lose weight. And if people are like, "Oh, you're walking a lot." No, I walk here, and is it, what else happens when you have less inflammation from the food? How does that tie into things like weight loss or allowing your body to just function properly?
Yep. So the more inflamed you are, the more weight you hold on to. Toxins are stored, and then toxins are stored into your fat cells. So the more inflammation you have, the more weight you hold on to, the more toxins you have. The more toxins you have, the more
Mm,
sick you become. So again, kind of going back to like what's banned in other countries compared to here, a lot of those things
yeah.
we're not allowed to have here, or sorry, we're not allowed, or we have here that we're not allowed to have over there. So that does
Yeah.
play a big role. So yeah, the walking helps, but it's a lot of those chemicals you're not being exposed to when you're on vacation as well.
Mhm. Oh my gosh, such a good point. So you were just in Italy, and I'm sure you had a great time sampling all the delicious food. It's one of my favorite places to go. So, what else did you notice about just the lifestyle and in Italy versus compared to here? Things that you wish that we were able to incorporate more of in the States?
Stress reduction, absolutely. I mean, that was there's
Mm.
it's like time doesn't exist over there. It seems like nobody's in a hurry. A dinner is a 3 hour event. It's not like, hey, I'm going to scarf something down and get back to work. Work kind of takes the back seat. It's more about living life, which I think we need a lot more of that here. Yeah, the stress is probably the biggest thing. And on top of that, people walk a lot more. They're not getting in their
Mhm.
car to drive, down to the grocery store. They're going to walk down the grocery store. Um,
Yeah.
there are a lot of people are stopping at the market that day and buying their produce and their meat to cook it that night. So a lot of it's more fresh. But I think the biggest thing is just stress. Work is a priority, but it's not like how we make it here. We're not stressed out about it and
Hmm.
one event to the next. It's a lot more relaxed, chilled lifestyle, which again, Americans need that, especially nowadays.
Oh, for sure. So, what are some of the things that you're going to incorporate in your own life? Because you did come back, so it's good to have you back in the states. We can't stay over there necessarily. But what are some of the things that you're going to try to do just to make sure that you hold on to that?
Um, I think so. Dinner to me has always been an important thing. It's something like growing up as a kid, we've always sat down as a family, but growing up too, you also had sporting events, and I'm the youngest of five boys, so one brother had this, another brother had
Mm,
this. So to me, it's just like slowing down, taking your time,
yeah,
being around loved ones and friends and family. I got to see some friends when I was over there, which was nice too. Um, so yeah, just the biggest thing I think is just slowing down, appreciating your food. I already eat pretty clean and organic anyways, but just making sure my food sources are good. I know exactly where things are coming from. Um, yeah, I think the biggest thing is just kind of slowing down, appreciating life a little bit more,
yeah.
not being in a rush to go to the next thing or the next event, or feel pressure to do something when you don't want to.
Right. Oh my gosh. Well, of course, stress is tied to so many chronic illnesses and cause of us not necessarily feeling well, a lot of mental health issues. But you mentioned something a couple times about toxins. So we know that toxins are around us, and we know about pesticides, probably most common. But what are some of the things that are maybe hidden that we're not necessarily aware of that we're exposed to on a daily basis?
Yeah. So from a female standpoint, definitely cosmetics. That's one of the
Mm,
worst industries. Now the reason for that is it's kind of similar to what we talked about earlier. A, a lot of those cosmetics are banned in other countries. We allow here in America. I can't remember the exact number, but I think there's over 100, I think it's 184 different chemicals that are banned in cosmetics in Europe that we allow here in America. So
Oh
it's a
my
huge
gosh.
number. And
Mm.
those cosmetics, they're linked from anything to messing with your hormones to increasing your risk of cancer, autoimmune diseases. So that's definitely one big hidden source that people often miss and don't look at. And I would even put just makeup in there too. We're talking about deodorants, even some toothpaste can be pretty toxic. Um, so that's probably one of the hidden sources that people often don't look at. Um, you know,
Hmm.
Water is another one. We should be drinking plenty of water on a daily basis. If you look at different studies out there through different major cities, I mean, they're finding anything from cocaine and heroin in the water system to birth control pills, antibiotics to all kinds of different drugs. So that's the thing I always tell people, getting a good water filter is a good place to start. That will help clean things up, especially if you're drinking plenty of water, which you should be. You want to make sure you're not being exposed to
Hmm.
all those things.
Oh my gosh. Well, I will be sure to include in the show notes some of these places that we can either purchase some of these things that you're talking about, or if there's websites. Are there websites that make it easy for us to determine if something has clean chemicals versus if it's banned somewhere else?
Yeah, the Environmental Working Group has a website. It's ewg.com/skin deep. So it's really cool because you can
Okay.
actually plug in any kind of cosmetic that you have, and it'll exactly show you the ingredients that are in there, what they lead to, how bad it is for you, and they'll actually give you a safer like recommendation. So you can kind of find a cleaner product that'll help kind of take some of those toxins out of your system. And then there's an app you can download on your phone too. It's called Think Dirty, and literally, you can scan a barcode on a product, and it'll show you exactly what's in it, and then how toxic it is for your body too. And then again, it'll give you an alternative recommendation that's a little bit cleaner. So those are two kind of good sources that I recommend for any kind of cosmetics or beauty products, anything like that.
Oh my gosh. There's so much to consider and to think about.
Right, right.
And there's also like a little bit, it can feel overwhelming. So I'm sure that I'm thinking about my own makeup bag, right? And I don't think about those things. I can't read the ingredients. You're assuming if you're purchasing it at a reputable store that it's okay to be used. But there are probably things that say that they're clean and maybe they aren't, because I try to make some of those purchases, but I'll be sure to absolutely take a look at that link. You guys have it a little bit easier.
Yeah, us guys have like yes, a heck of a lot easier. Yeah, and you can totally go down a rabbit hole with those things too. I mean,
Right.
you could spend hours and hours looking at stuff. So always, start slow. Pick the products
Yeah.
that you use the most, whether it's a foundation or a makeup or a lipstick, something like that. Enter those first and see, and then slowly start to
Hmm.
make some swaps for some cleaner products. If you do too much too quick, you're going to go crazy. So nobody wants that.
Yeah, exactly. No, it'll be interesting. So we talked about toxins and gut health. So what about food? So we often hear sometimes there's a debate between organic, not organic. You know, what are some tips that we can look at making sure that we are buying the freshest, best ingredients? Do you recommend going to farmers markets? What are some of the things that people can do to make a difference in their food supply?
Yeah, shopping local is one of the best things you can do. So whether you have a local farmer or a local rancher, somebody who raises your meat, that way at least where it's coming from, and you can communicate with that person too. Hey, what did you spray on this? Is there any kind of toxins or chemicals, herbicides,
Mhm.
pesticides? How was this meat raised? Did you use any kind of special antibiotics on that cow or whatever it is? So I think it's important to have somebody that you can know and trust that's local. Um,
Mhm.
when it comes down to pesticides, herbicides, there's something called the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen. So the Clean 15 is the 15 fruits and vegetables that have the least amount of pesticides on them, and then the Dirty Dozen are the 15 most. Oh, wait, sorry, Clean 15. I said that backwards. The Clean 15
Yeah.
are 15 fruits and vegetables that have the least amount of pesticides, and then the Dirty Dozen are 12 different fruits and vegetables that have the most amount of pesticides on them. So
Okay.
you can actually pull that up. It changes year to year, but it's pretty similar from year to year. And I always tell people too, the thinner the skin on a fruit or vegetable, usually means that it's going to absorb more toxins and pesticides. So like a blueberry or an apple or strawberry, something like that has a real thin
Yeah.
skin. Those are things that you want to try to
Hmm.
buy organic if you can. And there is more
Okay.
and more research coming out now showing that, hey, these herbicides, pesticides, they're not good for us in our bodies.
Hmm. Oh, I'm sure. Um, so that's good. Yeah, we'll absolutely take a look at that. I've looked at that before, and it definitely has helped inform how I shop. I mean, I try to buy organic as much as I can, and I feel like it's much more available right now at many places where we shop. So I have to ask you, because some of the things that you post on Instagram are about very interesting food prep. So talk a little bit about organ meat. I know that there's this resurgence in organ meat consumption. Now, I grew up with it because we didn't waste anything, but I see more functional medicine doctors and others in the industry talking about liver and talking about tongue and talking about other organs. So, what's the benefit of eating organ meat, and how do you find the organ meat that is good quality?
Yep. So organ meat is the richest source of any kind of vitamins, minerals. It's going to be, out of all the meats, the organ meat is definitely the richest source there. So when you talk about liver, you can't get much more B vitamins than liver. That's the best source. Things like heart contain CoQ10, which is hard to find in other
Mm-hmm.
or really any kind of food, especially meat. I call liver the multivitamin because it literally contains pretty much everything you would need. So if you're looking to get off a multivitamin, you want to take something else or eat something else
Yeah.
in the process, liver is the perfect thing. Um, Tongue's an interesting one. A lot of people don't like tongue just because of the what it is. So if you cut it up and you
The
serve it, and you,
texture, it's a little rough. Yeah.
yeah. You peel that outer membrane off, people get a little grossed out by that. So, um, but yeah, I mean, tongue's another one that contains a ton of nutrients, things that are hard to find in the muscle meat and then other foods. So when it comes down to like finding a clean source, you definitely with any kind of organ, you would definitely want to get that from a grass-fed animal. Um,
Hmm.
Especially when it comes down to like liver and the heart, because those
Yeah.
things do have some toxins in them. Not to a large extent, but the more pesticides, herbicides that cow eats, the more antibiotics that cow gets, those are going to be stored in some of those organs. So the less you can reduce that, the better it's going to be for your overall health. And that's kind of going back to like your question earlier, finding a local rancher or somebody who raises cows or
Yeah.
um, even like lamb, anything like that. You'll know exactly what goes into there. They'll tell you what's on it. So as long, and they should be honest
Hmm.
about it. So you're getting something nice and clean.
Okay. And so, what about local butchers? Are some local butchers, do they have good content in terms of meat and grass fed?
Yeah, you're seeing a lot more like local butchers coming up. I mean, at least I'm seeing that
Hmm.
in Cleveland here. There's a couple good ones. Ohio City Provisions. That's where I like to go
Hmm.
to. Farmers Rail is another good one. They have a couple locations. But yeah, you are seeing more and more of that. You get down to Amish country. It's how most of that meat's raised is organic and pasture raised.
Hmm.
So you're seeing more butchers down there, and you can find those things. The crazy thing about it too is like it's such a cheap cut of meat. Most people don't want it, so sometimes you can get these meats for $1 to $2 a pound, which with meat
Wow.
prices the way they are now, it's super cheap compared to the actual muscle meat. So yeah,
Hmm.
it's super cheap, nutritious for you, and if you cook it right, it does taste good.
Yeah. Oh, I love liver. So, like, what size portion do you need to eat? Should be be eating this daily? Like, do you eat liver and other organ meats daily, or is it a couple times a week?
Yeah, liver can get so there is a lot of vitamin A in liver. If you do have too much vitamin A, that can get a little toxic. So if you are going to eat
Okay.
liver on a regular basis, I always recommend like 2 3 times a week. That way, there
Okay.
is no toxic issues that happen to where you cause any kind of problems.
Hmm.
The rest of those, though, like your heart and your tongue, there's no limitations when it comes to that. You could eat those daily and not have any problems there.
Okay, interesting. All right, well, you heard it first here. I think everyone's going to go out and grab some stuff. We see all that. Like, I think that growing up, my family's from former Yugoslavia. We every time they would get something from the farm or back home, they would always slaughter an animal, and you just saved everything. And I remember eating all of that, and everything was prepared so great. But I think that then coming to the States, it was like it's not something I necessarily talk to people about at school. Like, yeah, we had liver and gizzards and heart, and
Right.
but it's interesting to see that that's coming back now as a resurgence, and because it really is good food.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
Yeah,
even kind of going back, like we were in Italy, I had intestines. That was one of the things I ate, and we had
yeah.
heart one day, and cow tongue was on the menu. So it is a lot more common in other countries. I think we're just squeamish here. We don't like trying new things. But yeah, it is something that you go to other countries. It's a primary calorie source for a lot of people.
Right. Yeah. So, if someone wants to work with you, and what is the best way that they would reach out to you, or how would they learn more to even decide whether, they should be considering a functional medicine doctor?
Yeah. I have a blog on my website. So I usually post about certain conditions, common ones that people have. Also, I'm pretty active on social media too. I try to put out as much content out there as I can in terms, kind of same things, certain conditions, things to look out for, signs and symptoms that things are going wrong in the body. So my website, you can check me out there. It's www.tbhfunctionalmedicine.com. And then my name on social media is, oh gosh, it's at drmarcuscerelli.com or .com is at Dr. Marcus Cirelli. But that's also somewhere you can find me too. So I think there's so many different functional medicine doctors out there now. It's becoming more mainstream that you can find a lot of people that are talking
Yeah.
about these things. And holistic health in general, just kind of exploding. People don't want the
Yeah.
band-aid solution anymore. They don't want to be on medication. So they're looking for alternative sources of healing and modalities to kind of get them better.
hmm That's so good, and we'll include all that in the show notes. So, one of the things that I love to talk to my clients about is the blue zones, right? Because people want to live a really good quality life. They want longevity. They don't want to just be barely surviving. They want to be thriving in their life and to live long, active lives. So, I know that we talked about a couple of things: the stress reduction. We talked a little bit about food, but let's talk about some of the other things that, in addition to that, from a functional or optimal health perspective, the sense of purpose in life and a strong community. So, is that something that you talk to your clients about as well? Like, go beyond the nutrition and talk about some of the other things they could be doing to maybe reduce their stress or just to create this greater sense of purpose in their life?
Yeah, I think everybody needs a community, like-minded people, people who make you laugh, people who, pick you up. Um, I think too many people stick around people for the wrong reasons, whether they're old friends and then they bring too much stress and drama to their lives. So yeah, I think finding the right people to be around is a huge component to health. And that even goes to
Yeah.
spouses too. If you have a bad spouse, I work with a lot of male and female clients, but a lot more female clients. Guys don't like coming in until they're absolutely broken and they can't function anymore. Um, but the female client, it's sometimes it's challenging because they want to make these changes in their lives, and their husband might not be on board, which makes it a lot more challenging
hmm
when it comes to making diet changes or working on stress. So I think if you are going to try to go on any kind of healing journey, it is important to have not only a practitioner supporting you, but somebody else there too,
Yeah.
that's in your corner that you can rely to. Because sometimes healing's tough. You have to go through some stuff that you've been through in the past, and it can be challenging. So having somebody there is good. Having people who've gone through something similar to that is huge too. But yeah, I think community is something that's often missed in the world today. Um, I think part of that's technology. We're so in our zone when it comes to technology.
Yeah.
People don't pick up the phone anymore and call anybody. It's always a text message, or they don't just drop in to see people anymore. It's always a phone call. So why not actually go see somebody, spend some time with them? Human connection is huge, and again, I think it's often missed when it comes to any kind of healing.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, what encourages you? So, you work with clients, you get to see people, and you're obviously helping them on their healing journey. But is there anything more at a macro level or globally that is encouraging you right now, in terms of people seeking healing or seeking to take control of their own personal health?
Yeah, it, that's a good question. you walk around and you see people that are just sick everywhere you go, right? I mean, look at the numbers. 1 out of every 3 American is obese. 2 out of every 3 Americans overweight. So
Yeah.
that right there is something that we have direct control over that, and it comes down to your diet and your lifestyle and what you're doing on a daily basis. Um, the medical bills are not getting any cheaper. We spend so much
Yeah.
money on medical compared to other countries. It's kind of insane. So
Mm-hmm.
if we can reduce some of that burden by, living healthier, eating healthier, that's part of what drives me. I want to inform people that, hey, you don't have to be sick. You don't have to feel this way. This is not normal to have these signs and symptoms of something's going wrong in the body. So I think, especially here in America, we need to open up a little bit more, open our eyes and figure out what's going on. So that's one of the things that drives me. I think it's just people being sick, and there's solutions out there that a lot of doctors don't talk about because it doesn't make money. And if it doesn't make money, then they're not going to talk about it. And a lot of times things I talk about people, they're free, stress reduction, breathing exercises, meditation,
Right.
cold showers. Those are all free things. Getting outside in sunshine, that's free. Being around loved
Yeah.
ones, that's free. It's a lot of stuff that you can do that it doesn't take much effort and time and money, but it has a huge impact on overall health. But again, now I digress a little bit, but money does kind of control everything here. So it does come
Yeah.
back to that. And, big pharma controls a lot of the things that goes into even the education that medical doctors are getting nowadays. So if we could get away from that and just focus on, real healing the way it should be, that's going to have a huge impact on a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's an interesting point that you bring up about the education in the medical system. I know that in terms of nutrition and food as medicine, it's not, I don't think that in medical school that actually is a large part of the education. I'm not sure what the number of hours is, but I remember reading something, and I don't want to misquote it, but it was really low in terms. I know that as a health coach, I received much more education in terms of nutrition and food as medicine. Do you see that changing at all? Or do you see any doctors, I don't know if you're talking to any doctors or ever collaborate with them, where they are seeking to learn more?
Yes and no. The answer to kind of go back, 4 hours is what medical doctors get in terms of nutrition training. So 4 years of
Okay.
school and you get 4 hours. What can you tell a patient
Yeah.
in that kind of thing? You don't get enough education to
Yeah.
educate somebody on that. Um, I think
Hmm.
there is starting to be a little bit more of a shift. I think some of these younger doctors that are coming out now are definitely more in tune with, hey, diet does play an impact on this. If you eat less inflammatory foods, you're going to recover from a surgery better, or you're going to have less chance of heart disease. So I think you're starting to see a shift. I think it's just
Hmm.
really slow.
Yeah.
You ask some of these old school doctors if diet has any kind of role in disease, and they're still going to tell you no, which is insane to me.
Right.
But yeah, a slow shift, but probably not fast enough, not enough of what we
Hmm.
need.
Yeah. But it's interesting because I think you mentioned at the beginning that you were seeing patients and you wanted to be able to treat them holistically, and you started seeing things beyond what they were originally coming to you. And I know Dr. Mark Hyman started the same way, Dr. Andrew Weil. There's so many medical doctors who then realized that they weren't able to treat their patients, or they weren't necessarily getting better. But it's still a little bit slow because I know that the curriculum has not changed necessarily to keep up with maybe the demands there.
Yep,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
So we talked about what drives you and what you're optimistic about. Anything that really concerns you in terms of things that people should really take a look at right now and make some changes in their life?
Um, ooh,
Well, you mentioned
can't
autoimmune, so I know that continues to increase with no real treatment, right? I mean, that's kind of the point of autoimmune, is the definition is that the body is attacking itself,
correct.
which is not natural.
No, no. What was the question again? Can you repeat that one more time? I want to make sure I heard that right.
Yeah, just if there's anything that really has you concerned, that you want to make sure that whoever is listening says, you know what, maybe I will take this a little bit more seriously and either look at the toxins in my makeup or get a water filtration system, because the water supply. If you had to pick maybe the top 3 things that people could do today, what would you recommend that be?
Yeah. So one, I would say, eating a diet that's full of whole foods, things that aren't processed, that comes out of a can or a box. I think that's one easy
Yeah.
step to take. Um,
Mm.
Now, to go further with that, if you want to do it organic, yeah, that'd be even better. But at least starting with real whole foods, I think that's the most important thing. What's at the end of your fork is going to impact your health the most. So, what are you eating on a day-to-day basis? I think it's okay to have some cheat meals here and there. I'm not perfect. I don't think anybody should be perfect. I always
Yeah.
like to use like the 80-20 principle with people.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think food is the number one thing that people need to look at and figure out, hey, what am I actually putting in my body? What is it doing to my body? Because food is information. Everything you eat is going to turn into information in your body. So if you give your body real whole ingredients, it's going to give you better health outcomes. If you feed it junk, you're going to feel like crap. That
Mm-hmm.
there's the science there to prove it. There's no arguing that. Um,
Yeah.
Number two, I think again, kind of going back to the whole water thing. I think 74% of Americans are chronically dehydrated. So it's a huge
Oh my
number.
gosh.
It's insane. It's insane.
And can,
Yeah.
and I've heard various things. I think that the standard has always been, 64 ounces. But then I've also studied that actually half your body weight in ounces. So what do you usually tell your clients? Like, what's a good range?
Yeah. I tell people, so half your body weight's always been a good like kind of gauge. But I like
Hmm.
my patients to have at least like 3 clear urinations a day. So when you
Okay.
pee, you should see it nice and clear. You shouldn't have maybe a little bit of a yellow tint to it, but you shouldn't have that dark yellow
Hmm.
color. Um,
Right.
so you want to have one in the morning, one in the afternoon, and one in the evening of nice clear peas. If you're going a lot more than that, and you're having 6, 7, that means you're drinking too much. And everybody's
Okay.
different. Some people can handle 100 ounces. Some people can only handle 20 ounces of water. It just depends.
Oh
But
my
I
gosh, I
think
didn't know that. That's interesting.
yeah, I think water intake's huge and it's something that's often overlooked. And again, kind of going back to that, it doesn't cost anything. Water's so readily available to
Right.
everybody. But it is a huge component that's often missed.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and one of the other things you mentioned was just getting outside and getting fresh sunlight, because we haven't talked about. We've talked a lot about nutrition. We've talked about toxins and water supply and some of those things, but most people think about health as tied to maybe a number on the scale or the way they fit in their clothes, and so they think about exercise and heavy exercise. So, what would you say in terms of what do you need to maintain proper health versus maybe what we're taught that we need in terms of exercise daily?
Yeah, I think you need, in terms of exercise, I think you need like a fine balance, right? You don't have to go to the gym 5 days a week and work out and lift heavy weights. In my opinion, walking is a form of exercise. Yoga is a form of exercise.
Mhm.
There's so many different things out there you can do. It doesn't have to be weightlifting. Now, weightlifting is one of the best things as we age, especially maintaining muscle mass. We do lose muscle mass as we get older, but you don't have to go to the gym and work out. Like a meathead, like most people think you have to do. Um, but yeah, I think exercise comes in all different forms. Biking, hiking, all those things. So I tell people, just try to do something on a daily basis to move your body. A
Yeah.
lot of us sit at a desk for 8 hours. We don't move enough.
Hmm.
We go from work to home to sit at the couch and watch 4 hours of TV, then we go to bed. So um,
Right.
something easy, just move your body on a daily basis. That's an easy place to start to make sure you're getting some kind of
Hmm.
exercise in your life.
Absolutely. And I always tell clients to do it out. If you can go outside, you're getting your sunshine at the same time. You're getting some fresh air. Helps from a stress reduction perspective too. Um, so let's talk a little bit about things that maybe as we start to age, things that start happening. And so I know you see a lot of female clients. So do you have female clients that come to you maybe with some hormone challenges as they're either entering perimenopause or menopause? And, what are some advice or things that we could do if we're in that stage of life?
Yeah. So again, you guys have it a lot harder than us males. Yeah. Um, Menopause, obviously, it's something you can't stop, right? As a female, it's going to happen. No, it's just a matter of when. So there's a lot
Yeah.
of things you can do to help support that from a natural standpoint. There's a lot of good herbs out there that can help with, like the night sweats is a big one that a lot of females tend to experience.
Hmm.
Um, Sometimes cramping is another big one. So certain herbal products are great. Black cohosh is really good. There's something called cramp bark, which is another herb that's very good. So again, you can't stop these things, but you can at least support the systems as you're going through these changes. That way it makes it easier for you. Now in terms of the sexual desire sometimes drop too as you stop producing estrogen when you go through the menopause cycle there. So there's certain foods that can actually increase that. Yams are a great source of natural estrogen, so you can bump that back up. So start increasing more yams in your life, a couple times a week. Um, you know, when you get older too, this is male and female, as I kind of mentioned, you start to lose muscle mass. So that's where,
Yeah.
some form of weight bearing exercise comes in there too to help out. Cognitively, we start to decline a little bit too. So a lot of good protein in your diet, get older, especially with the age of 75, is extremely important. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, there's all
Yeah.
kinds of stuff to do, but again, we often neglect these things. And I often find people, when people retire, they go from being so active and then they go to sit on a couch all day. So that'd be going
Hmm.
back to, making sure you're getting some kind of exercise or daily movement into your routine. Having that good community, getting out with friends and family, seeing loved ones. So you're not in your house all day, getting out in the sunshine, things like that.
Yeah. Gosh. And the other thing that came to mind for me is just getting older. You talked about cognitive decline. And I know we start to lose gray matter, and that's where things like meditation are very helpful because you can actually reverse some of that loss. But are there things, foods that we should be aware of, either things that we should add or maybe things we should remove from our diet for dementia and Alzheimer's, that, kind of keeps us sharper longer and maybe slows down those illnesses?
Yeah. So from foods to add in, definitely your omegas. So omega threes, which is your fat. Those are the good fats. So they come from, salmon, avocados, nuts, and seeds. You can also take this in
Yeah.
supplement form too. That's one of the biggest ones. Your brain's mostly fat, so you want to make sure you're giving it plenty of fat, especially as you age. Antioxidants are also very important. So blueberries, strawberries, those are really good sources of antioxidants. Help fight off free radical damage in the brain. What to take away. They're calling dementia Alzheimer's now. They're calling it type 3 diabetes. So sugar
Oh my
is one of
gosh.
the worst.
Okay.
Yeah, sugar is one of the worst things for the brain. Directly decreases the gray matter that you mentioned.
Hmm.
Stops those neurological inputs from firing the way that they should. So sugar is definitely one thing you want to try to stay away from, or at least limit how much you're having on a weekly and monthly
Yeah.
basis. Um, that's the first food. Anybody comes to my office that has Alzheimer's dementia, that's the first food we take out. You got to get off the sugar because it is just so inflammatory for the body. And then the last, kind of food to take away is just processed stuff, the
Yeah.
stuff we shouldn't have. So the bad fats in there, the bad oils that are in there, which are mostly, found in your processed foods. Those are other things you want to stay away from because they are very inflammatory.
Yeah. I mean, sugar, I think Dr. Mark Hyman, he says sugar is like treat it like a recreational drug. I mean, it's really bad for you. There's absolutely zero benefit. It's going to wreak havoc on your body. You're going to have a chemical response to it. So if you use it, just be aware of it. And it's interesting because I think most people aren't aware of the added sugars in their everyday food. So if you look at, I always tell people, if you're drinking milk, look at the amount of sugar in just milk versus like a little bit of cream, that, or plain Greek yogurt versus the stuff with the fruit on the bottom that has all those sugars in it, or tomato sauces, like salad dressings. There's so many things where if you just learn to read the labels, you would realize you're eating so many grams of sugar a day that you're probably not even aware of.
Right, right. And the food industry is not dumb. They add sugar to these foods for a reason because
Right.
sugar is very
Yeah.
addicting. It's you look at brain scans, and it's actually more addicting than cocaine and heroin, which is even scarier.
Yep.
So these food engineers that design foods and food products, they know exactly what they're doing. They're putting enough in there because they want you to become addicted to the foods. So you keep eating them, you keep buying
Right.
them. So yeah,
Yeah.
sugar. There sugars in foods that you would be surprised. I mean, sometimes you pick a bottle of water and there's sugar added to it. It's like, why is there sugar in a bottle of water? Shouldn't this just be water? It's
Right.
scary.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
one way to drink more, I suppose.
Right. 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 Yeah.
um, I, I do think I do like a square of 85% dark chocolate, and I do think that is medicinal. Okay, I hope
I agree.
you agree with me on this one.
I do on that one. I do. No, no, I do. I do. Yeah. When it comes to chocolate, the darker the better. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, just a little bit. Just need a little bit to go a long way. So, what about alcohol? So, alcohol, I think it's very accepted. It's very social. I actually read something recently where they said that alcohol is the only drug where people question why if you choose to abstain and you don't choose to consume alcohol, people are like, why? What's the reasoning versus, any other drug? So, and there is still a movement that of people who are sober curious or maybe are starting to experiment with not consuming as much alcohol. Do you see that shifting? And what is the tie to alcohol and maybe just optimal health overall?
Yeah. No, I think you're seeing a big movement with alcohol. I think a lot of people are trying to avoid it and stay away from it. Um,
Hmm.
there's no health benefit to alcohol. I don't care who's going to tell you otherwise. There isn't. You know, wine does have some antioxidants in them, but the inflammation that's created doesn't outweigh the benefits. Um,
Mm.
so alcohol is very inflammatory, for especially for the brain. It actually shuts down certain areas of the brain, which is why you get drunk and you make dumb decisions. Long term, that can lead to permanent damage, especially if you're a chronic user.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean, and you're right. It is such a social thing that Friday night, Saturday night, even throughout the course of the week, everywhere you go, every dinner,
Yeah.
it's kind of like you're the weirdo if you don't have a drink. Um, but
Right.
yeah, I think there is a big movement now where you're seeing people drinking at least a lot less than what they used to.
Hmm.
And it's like here in Ohio, winter's coming, and there's nothing else to do except for go to the bar or hang out with friends. So I think you see, especially as the shift of the season around the holidays, you see alcohol
Yeah.
consumption go even more. Um, but
Hmm.
yeah, there is no health benefit to it, and I'm not going to act like I don't consume it from time to time because I do. But there is, again, from a health standpoint, you're not getting any kind of benefit there.
Yeah, no judgment. I mean, I think it's definitely something that I've been looking at for myself too, because I love red wine. And it's interesting because you study the blue zones and you can say, oh, they consume a lot of red wine and people will drink it. But even the production of wine, the way it's produced in other countries, definitely more organic, doesn't have added sulfites, et cetera. So it's not the same thing having a glass of wine from Napa here versus even from an alcohol content perspective, percentage wise, as to maybe what you would get in Europe.
Yep, yep. And two, if you
Yeah.
look at there's a lot of studies that have come out. So you take California wines, 90 98 or 99% of those had hints of the glyphosate in there, which is your Roundup.
Oh
So on
my
top of
gosh.
that, you're getting the alcohol, and then you're getting the herbicides that come with it, and that's creating even further damage in the body. So yeah, and again, that's banned in other countries. So there's kind of that
Yeah.
twofold thing there as well.
Okay. We have to make sure we do not end on a depressing note. We need to
No, no,
share some good news.
yeah, yeah.
I'm ready to go clean my cupboards out. No, I think that the good news is that we can make, I think, many choices that you said that we can look at is look at our food supply, look at what we're consuming, eat healthier, make sure we're hydrated, go outside, move our body. These are absolutely things that if we started doing them and created them as a healthy habit, we'd start to feel better. And if people don't, we're definitely going to include in the show notes ways that they can follow you because you have such great content. You're so generous with the content that you provide. And I have attended one of your group coaching classes, which I've loved and learned so much around all these topics, which is great. So I'm sure that anything that you offer will be available on your website. But I do ask everyone, every guest on the show, it's tied to the title of the show, which is Live the Width of Your Life. So, what does it mean to you to live the width of your life?
That's another great question. I think really slowing down and looking at your life and appreciating what you do have. Number one, I think is it's kind of part of it. Um, I try to take every day, I try not to take every day for granted because you never know when tomorrow's your day is going to end, right? It could be anytime. You can walk across the street and something could happen to you. So I think the biggest thing is realizing that we have it pretty good here in America. There's so many things we take for granted, whether it's just having a roof overhead or clothes on our body or food and food to be able to eat. So I think a lot of people need to realize that there's so much out there to be grateful for. And I think, spending, even 2 minutes in the morning and realize, do some gratitude, whether it's writing it down or just say, I'm thankful for these 5 things a day. I think that goes a long way, and it would make people appreciate life on Earth a lot more. Probably reduce a lot of stress and anxiety to it that we have. But yeah, I think that's something that, just really slowing down, appreciating the small things, appreciating the change in seasons that's happening right now. Just not taking a day for granted, because again, you never know what tomorrow is going to look like for you. And so being around loved ones, being around people you appreciate, I think that's a big thing too. Spending time with them, because, life's not promised to anybody. It could be taken away really, really quickly. So I think, yeah, just slowing down, appreciating what you have, appreciating what's going on around you, not taking things for granted.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And you're right. Gratitude is so important, and it just changes perspective. It just shifts everything when you start your day and you end your day in gratitude. I want to thank you. I'm grateful for you for coming on, for sharing so much. Grateful for what you put out into the world. I know that this is a personal passion and mission for you. And so we'll definitely include all the ways that we can support you. And I will ask you, what's the best way that we can support you?
Yeah, I mean, a follow is always a great thing. I try to put out as much information out there. So on Instagram, follow me. I think you'll get a lot of, good health tips, things that you can start incorporating into your life pretty quickly. If you want to support me in the movement, eat healthier, eat cleaner, reduce your toxins. But no, I think a good follow, again, because I try to put out as much information out there as I can. So that's a good place to at least start.
Absolutely. We'll make it easy for folks to be able to do it. Thank you, Dr. Cirelli, for joining me today, and continued good luck. And I will update you on my progress of all the things that we talked about today.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. Have a good one. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you're inspired to finally take courageous action on a personal or professional goal that has been on your heart for some time, then follow this podcast, because every week we'll have intimate, authentic conversations with guests who have redefined success, created healthy new habits to support optimal health, and finally release the stories and limiting beliefs that kept them stuck in a life they didn't love. If you want to start or grow deeper in your own transformation journey, then I am happy to answer questions on a one-on-one 30-minute transformation strategy call at no cost to you. Head on to my website to book your slot today, and I will see you next time.